Hi Kyusyo, and let's break down your animation. So we have some nice studies and a nice shooting animation here. So overall, both forms and the spacing looks quite nice. The only thing I would change is probably in this animation. It's better to bring this frame closer. So right now it's quite far away from the previous frame in terms of this part, and because of that we get a really explosive start, but then because of these particles it kind of slows down a bit too much, so it's better to try it a bit closer to the previous frame. Then we won't lose the acceleration as fast. Overall, the animation looks quite nice, so we can improve it just a tiny bit by making the particles on this frame a bit different in terms of size, because right now these three particles and these two particles, when they go from this frame and when they are on this frame, they're quite similar, so it kind of makes it a bit less interesting. It's also a bit less interesting that these particles are on the same level, so they have the same form and they're on the same level most of the time, so it makes it a bit symmetrical. And if you look at it here, this particle suddenly goes in the opposite direction. So next one. So this animation is actually quite nice. I like the smoke bits, I like the sparks. We can add a bit more variety to the sparks, so it would be nice if there were some sparks that have a more complex movement. For example, sparks that are going and swirling and then have a wave-like motion, or sparks that have a bit different shape language. The other thing is that it kind of breaks it into levels, so have this and this, this and this, and it creates a bit symmetrical form. So to avoid that, we can change it up just a bit to get rid of that symmetry. So we can go for something like this, or a bit different, it depends. The thing is that we want to make this and this less symmetrical, and to make this kind of house not exactly leveled, because right now they're quite close to each other. And we have a trio here, which is also quite similar in terms of the distance between these points. So if we break it down, it kind of looks like this, and you can see that in this regard it's quite symmetrical. So we can play a bit more with the form, really amp it up in some places, tone down in some other places. And get rid of that symmetry just a tiny bit. But overall, quite nice. Again, we can break up the particles in terms of size. So right now, you see these particles are very similar in terms of size, and we have this big particle, which is nice. But compositionally, it would be interesting to have more variety on the sides as well. So maybe there's a smaller particle here, a medium particle here, big particle here. We can make it more interesting by giving it some definition, maybe it's more like this. Maybe it has something else going on. Maybe we have some smaller particles here. Then we'll have a bit more variety. But overall, it's working quite well as this. Again, everything kinda falls on the same level, so these particles, they reflect each other. They're very similar in terms of size, in terms of their position, and in terms of shape language. And yet again, see these particles, they tend to be on the same line. So if you connect them, it kind of creates these parallel lines. So parallel line, parallel line. So we want to break it up a bit, either by adding particles or by moving these particles that we already have. And again, yeah, as I said, it would be more interesting if we add some wave motion or some variety there to make it more interesting. As for the smoke, it looks quite nice. The design is nice. In terms of the color palette, it would be nice if the smoke would change the color, so it can kind of cool off. It can start quite saturated. Let me show an example. So the smoke can start out like this, bringing in the saturation. What? Oh, okay. Sorry, you have the dithering option on, which is handy if you use gradients, but as we only have a single color fill, it messes up the GIF a bit because every pixel has a bit different color. So dither adds noise to the GIF file. So it's better to be used if you use gradients or a lot of colors in your picture, but not if you're doing a solid fill. And then you can kind of cool it off and slowly decrease the saturation. So you can 1, 2, or decrease it faster. Yeah, probably faster. And then as we decrease saturation, we can slowly bring it towards blues. That will make animation way more appealing and yeah, more interesting to look at. The second thing that we can improve about the smoke is this kind of hole in the middle. It would be more interesting if you keep the shape of the smoke intact or together just a bit longer, and if we have a more interesting shape here. So right now this is just a straight line. So in essence, it's just a straight line, and a straight line for the smoke is not the most interesting thing that we can do. We can do all kinds of things with it. So we can start it slower, and, for example, builds this kind of shape. So instead of just making it a straight line, we can do some kind of shapes here. This kind of shape, or whatever you want, but we want to break it up just a bit in terms of these forms and the shapes to make it more appealing. So it's not just a straight line all the time. And the same thing here. We can add something here as it goes to break that straightness and to add more interesting forms and shapes. The other thing that we can improve here is we can keep the deceleration longer. So right now it starts like this. It starts like this, then it immediately decelerates quite a lot. And from here it almost stops. So what we can do is we can keep this deceleration longer. So we can start here, that's great, have more acceleration just a bit, and then slow it down a bit slower so it travels further and that it doesn't stop going forward by the end of the animation. So we're slowing it down but giving it more space to slow down, because right now at the end, like from this frame, it seems like it's almost static. So it's better to keep some momentum on the way forward. We can also play a bit with the shapes here. So right now it gained kind of bubble. We can use this part, add some masses there, and create more direction and momentum. And you can even add some rotation to the elements as they go. For example, it can expand like this. Just adding that variety in shapes and keeping it more interesting. Because right now this motion is almost linear, it just goes and erases this form almost straight in this direction. So that's most of the tips. Hope that helps you, and if you have any questions, ask them, tag me, and I'll try to answer it. So good luck and see you later.